Hello everybody, this is David. Welcome back to my channel. This video is a continuation of the series The Christian Ethic in the 21st Century, and we are currently looking at the world of work. In the last video we looked at the rights, duties and responsibilities of the individual worker and also the workplace. In this video we're going to have a look at what does work mean to us on a personal level. So if you're ready, let's continue. What is work to us? What place has it got in our lives? What ought work be to us? What place ought it to have in our lives? Now it can be, we could say that my work is everything and that's what I live for. Carlyle said, "Blessed is he who has found his work. Let him ask for no further blessedness." Sir Henry Coward, the musician, said at the end of his career that there was no reason to thank or congratulate him on his work because all his life he had been paid for doing the work that he would gladly have paid to be allowed to do. Paul Tournier, the great doctor, said that every doctor must feel that he is a collaborator with God. A man can find God and life in his work. Now, this is far from being true for everyone. There are people such as these I've just mentioned that can find their real life in their work. But in Robert Louis Stevenson's book, Inland Voyage, there was a man who drove the hotel bus at Maubeuge, and he said, "Here I am. I drive to the station. Well, and then I drive back to the hotel. And so on every day of the week, all around. My God, is that life?" Or do you remember Charles Lamb, for 33 long years, a clerk in the East India Company's offices, as he talks of the dry drudgery of the desk's dead wood? Now, for long enough now, Christian ethics have been piously teaching that in our everyday work we must find our joy, our pride, our self-satisfaction, our self-fulfillment. We've been quoting John Keble, who said, "The trivial round, the common task, would furnish all we ought to ask. Room to deny ourselves, a road to bring us daily nearer God." Now, it's time that we stopped talking these pious platitudes and took a fresh look at our philosophy of work. Now, of course, it is still possible for a person to find their life in their work. For example, a minister of the gospel can do that. As Peter Green used to say, "Had I 9 lives like a cat, I should have been a parish priest every time." A doctor, a teacher, an artist, a craftsman, a motor mechanic who has the thrill of seeing a recalcitrant engine bursting into life. This is all right, but this is not by any means all. Now, in the first place, I doubt if more than 10% of people really choose what they are going to do. They leave school or college and they take the first thing that comes to hand, not because they want to, but because they have to. Now, in the second place, the more developed industry becomes, the more automation takes over. The cleverer we become, the more jobs there are in which a person is a machine minder, a presser of buttons, a manipulator of switches, a doer of one repetitive action as the article which is taking shape glides past them on the conveyor belt. Now, the plain fact is we cannot find life in that kind of existence, and it's going to become more common. The machine replaces the craftsman. An automatic process replaces individual skill. And a man is left doing things in which it is not possible to take a pride. So we have to admit then that under modern conditions, a man's work or a lady's work may well be the process by which they earn a living for themselves and their family and nothing else, nothing more. And the consequence is that nowadays there are many, an increasing number in fact, who will have to find their real life outside their work. Now, there are plenty of people who have already solved this problem. There are men who earn a living through the day and who come alive when they sing in the choir or act in a dramatic society in the evening. There are people who through the day earn money and then come home to find life, for example, in the Boy Scouts or the Girl Guides, in work for charities or for old people or the homeless. There are people who have a hobby which is their real life. Now, there are any number of people who have, so to speak, double lives. Now, Charles Lamb was the slave of his desk in the office, but he escaped to write the essays the world still reads. C.L. Dodgson was teaching mathematics and writing textbooks like an elementary treatise on determinants or Curiosa Mathematica. Amazing book title, don't you think? But he was writing Alice in Wonderland at the same time. There are people who have a sphere of service or of interest or of art into which they can escape and live. But there are others who haven't, who cannot see beyond, for example, the cinema or the TV or the bingo, the football match. All good enough things in themselves, I suppose, but not things in which a person can invest their lives. So certain things are needed. What are we saying then? Let's have a look. Firstly, what we are really saying is that a situation has arisen where people need education for leisure as much as they need education for work. Now, this must mean the rebirth of education, so that education does not only teach the things necessary to make a living, but also the things which make us able to live. Now, there is a sense in which education has broken down. There are areas in the country where, with schools out of which a child would come, never having written one single line in answer to any question, unable to put a paragraph together on paper. There are levels of education out of which the child will come with no reading desire other than the TikTok or something like that, or Facebook or some kind of social media thing, that type of thing. Now, when G.K. Chesterton was a child, he had a cardboard toy theatre with cut-out characters. One of the characters was a man with a golden key. He could never remember what character that man with the golden key represented, but that character was always identified in his mind with his father, whom he saw as a man with a golden key who unlocked all sorts of doors, unlocking and leading to all sorts of wonderful things. Now, the dream of education is that education should be a golden key to unlock the doors not only to the skills which are necessary to make a living, but to the things of the human spirit, of art, of music, of drama, by which men and women will find life. Secondly, people have bodies as well as minds, and a good deal of juvenile delinquency which exists is due to the fact that we've forgotten this fact. It's incredible how many new towns were planned, new estates, that type of thing, in which there was literally nothing to do, and in which if there was any grass, the only thing allowed on it was a notice to tell you to keep off it. Now, Eric Fromm, the psychologist, has said quite truly that everyone, especially a young person, has in them a certain dynamism, a certain life force, a certain energy. And if that force, that energy is not directed towards life, it will certainly be directed into destruction. So destruction is the outcome of unlived life. We cannot put a young person into a concrete desert with nothing to do, or in the end they will throw a brick through a window or start a fight through sheer boredom. So in the new society there must be plenty to do when the hours of work are done. Thirdly, in the new world in which the time after work matters so much, the church must become the centre of the community. Now, of course, a church is a place where we praise and pray, but a church should be far more than that. The church should be the place to which people turn to find the satisfaction of every honest need in life. Now, it is one of the great truths that the better we know a person, the more deeply and truly we can worship with them. We can pray best with the person with whom we have played best. The person behind us in the church should not be a holy stranger, but a living friend. Now, a long time ago, George Bernard Shaw, of all people, wrote this about the church. Now, it's a little bit dated, of course, but in principle, it remains the same. This is what he said. If some enterprising clergyman with a cure of souls in the slums or the estates were to hoist a board over his church, a sign over his church door with the following inscription: "Here, men and women, after working hours, may dance without getting drunk on Fridays, hear good music on Saturdays, pray on Sundays, discuss public affairs without molestation from the police on Mondays, have the building for any honest purpose they choose on Tuesdays, bring the children for games, amusing drill and romps on Wednesdays, and volunteer for a thorough scrubbing down of the place on Thursdays, he could reform the whole neighbourhood." End of quote. So the church, with the 7-day open door, must be part of the new era. Now, how many churches do you know that are open 7 days a week? Not many, is there? So fourthly, one last thing, we have seen that work can be the biggest thing in life, but that for many people, life will need to begin after the day's work is done. So in this video, we've been looking at ways in which this new leisure can be and must be used, but we cannot leave it there. So far, our suggestions have been basically selfish. It's all about the one thing that could give meaning to my life is this or that. But the one thing that could give meaning to life is service, and that is the service of the community. If the older members in the society would remember what they could do for the young, from teaching them judo, for example, or to teaching them the Bible. If the young would remember what young hands could do for the lonely, the aged and the helpless, for example, mowing their grass, going shopping for them. If the strong would remember the weak, and if those who have too much would remember those who have too little. If there was an inbuilt obligation to service, there would be no problem at all. For it is in living for others that a person finds life for themselves. That's the exact principle of the Christian faith, that Jesus Christ himself lived for others. He gave himself for you, he gave himself for me. And that's what Christians down through the centuries have done. They've given themselves for other people. They found life in serving God, serving their fellow man. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? So I want to thank you for joining me in this video. And in the next video, we're going to be looking at those people. What can we do about those people who have deliberately decided to drop out of society? So I want to thank you for joining me in this video. See you next time. Bye bye.